Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever the fuck you're watching this episode. This is another episode of Backyard Chains brought to you by Backyard Sports Media. My name is Raul Herrera, and if you haven't already noticed already, I've got the disc golf guy, fucking legend, Terry Miller. How are you tonight, Terry?
I'm great. Do I have to add an adjective or two to my name? I love the intro. I appreciate it.
Got a mouth like a sailor. It'll never go away.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Man, good to see you on the show. So I wanted to talk about the results of the Innova Open. This is such a long, unnecessarily long Innova Open at the 28th annual Texas State Disc Golf Championships. Like Innova had to go so extra with that. A DGPT Silver Series, but Terry was busy getting great footage of the boys down in Tallahassee getting it done, as well as you covered FBO coverage, correct?
Yeah, we got a little bit of action in there. Not too much. We're going to have more from Throwdown this weekend, but yeah, it was great covering Tallahassee. Of course, we had a little bit of that split mentality. We had some superstars. Most of them stayed in Texas, but a few of them headed over to Tallahassee too. So excited to get the coverage.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it sounds like you've had a very crazy season already. I mean, the amount of coverage that you're having to get, the amount of traveling. We spoke briefly before the show started about everything that you have going on. And man, I envy you and don't at the same time. And I'm not really sure how that's entirely possible. So how are you holding up on the first kind of getting through the Texas leg, moving into Florida? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm great. My season is really unique in that I am really busy during what most people would consider the off season. I'm busy all the time, but I'm especially busy during the off season because that's when I kind of lean back into my post production, and the channel, the Disc Golf Guy channel. That's when I finally kind of get back to it. And now I have so many of these incredible events that aren't, elite series style events, but they're really solid events and they're usually in great places with great people. And now I kind of have this rhythm and routine. I find myself out in Arizona during the end of the year. And then then at the beginning of the year, I'm back in Arizona for a couple of events. I got to go back to Thailand this year. Picked up a new event when I was in Thailand.
So fun.
Yeah. So just, and then I kind of like take off one hat one weekend of post-production. And then the next weekend I put on a different shirt and a different hat. And I'm, with the Disc Golf Network. And sometimes that's in the studio in Bend with Nate and Val. And then sometimes that's on the course, like I was in Vegas while Ian and Philo are in the booth. So every weekend it's something different.
Have you captured any bad weather while you've been out in the field for Disc Golf Network? Because I've seen it, on some stuff, just you filming, even especially back in the earlier days. I've seen you kind of struggle with the elements. Have you had to do it on live Disc Golf Network yet?
No, it's been pretty moderate for me, knock on wood, fingers crossed, whatever. For the most part, like for instance, there were supposed to be thunderstorms this weekend on Saturday in Tallahassee. They just barely missed us, but I heard that maybe some weather was in Houston. So of course, flip a coin or whatever. It's just a matter of on any given weekend. I got poured on for a few minutes when I was in Thailand, but otherwise had pretty much beautiful weather the rest of the time I was there. So it comes and goes just like weather everywhere, but I've been okay so far.
That Florida weather is certainly, there's a slight chance of rain every day. It's inevitable.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, and somehow we escaped it. So that was good.
For sure. So as I try to get this screen pulled up here, let's go ahead and just real quickly jump into what we got going on as far as the results for the MPO. So Calvin Heimberg is allergic to not being on a podium.
Yeah.
He cannot not be on a podium. We'll get to that here a little bit later. Anthony Barella and Joel Freeman was a great battle to watch for that number 2 spot, all the way down to the lawn dart on the 18th hole of the final round that Anthony Barella threw. Kind of struggled through the round. He did okay. He did what he could. He just, I think there was a few holes that I feel like he kind of got tripped up on, and it maybe impacted his momentum a little bit. There was a lot of conversation this weekend about Joel Freeman, particularly his on course and mid round etiquette, his conversation sometimes with himself. Mostly, it's not really as malicious as one would think, but not on the Nico Locastro level, but certainly something that a lot of people, both on the Disc Golf Network and even in the post production of this with Central Coast, they saw, they made a point to talk about it. So I guess, without having to make any kind of call outs, I'm not looking for any kind of clickbait here. So please don't clip this. I will not clip this. Joel, Terry, excuse me. What's your experience with Joel?
Well, let me preface this by saying I paid very little attention because I was filming in Tallahassee. However,
just your general experience.
No. But however, one of the few headlines that I saw that was was on Reddit or something for 2 seconds one night, the thread started with Joel Freeman needs to learn what inner monologue is. And so I think that speaks to exactly what you're talking about, that, exactly. and I didn't see anything as to, what he was being vocal about. He's not been shy. If there's a distraction or if something happens on the course, he's usually in the past not been shy about saying something about it. And, obviously that can rub anyone a different way, depending on who you are. And even if you think about it, how a person is playing will maybe dictate how that is perceived.
Oh, of course.
If you're shredding and you're semi-politely saying, hey, can you step back? Or, hey, can you be quiet? As opposed to you're having a rough day, things aren't going well, and then you're barking at someone.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the difference was this weekend, but just think about like where your mentality is. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And so Joel being vocal doesn't surprise me. He, I don't want to lean too heavily into it, but I saw, when you look back at the, for lack of a better term, the likability chart that was created by UltraWorld last year, in a survey that was done, you found that him and Nico both ranked relatively low. And that's probably large in part to what they're saying or how they're acting on the course. And now if that's you and your personality and that's just how you want to live your life unapologetically with, no concern, that's great. But that's also that's going to impact your bottom line. That's going to impact what feature cards you're on, who's rooting for you, then who's buying your shirts.
Exactly. Who's buying your Tour Series Gator? Like it's, it all comes down to actions have consequences. We got to see some unfortunate consequences last year for Nico Locastro and some pretty catastrophic consequences. Great bounce back this year. I love that he's making the effort to focus on his attitude. Even Gannon Buhr, after the win at the Open, made a conscious effort to check himself, because he's also been known to have some behaviors and some obviously long putting times along with Nico. It's something that they have to self-police, and everyone, as far as the card is concerned, they can cite him if they choose. And so I think that's something that's on my that I don't feel like I fully comprehend because I'm not out there with them, right, when they're playing, is the overall, what you don't see on camera or live coverage, the conversations that happen in between the holes, the overall mood. Like when somebody is playing bad, like a Joel, you don't see him, maybe griping at himself or everyone around him in between holes, not even saying that that's happening, but anything that happens off camera, we're not privy to. And interesting.
Yeah. Again, like you said, everybody has to think about what that means to them, how they want to carry or conduct themselves. And as we're getting more fans to these tournaments, they are taking it in person. And then they're immediately going home and getting on Reddit or Facebook and saying, hey, I had this interaction today in person. And then, recounting what it was. And some people are saying, I just became the biggest so-and-so fan in the world because here's what I saw them do. And then, of course, the exact opposite can happen. So, yeah, it's all part of your branding, and it's all part of who you are at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's comes down to personal. Some people are introvert, extroverts. Like, the joke with Calvin Heimberg is the classic, like he never smiles, right? And we've
Mhm.
since seen some smiles out of him semi consistently. We got a little bit of a smile when he took out another W this weekend this year, but yeah, I mean, it's, I think there's nothing wrong with being poised and reserved, and there's also nothing wrong with being like we see some chatter from Paul Macbeth after a
Mhm.
bad putt. He knew
Mhm.
that it was a bad shot. He walks away. He probably mutters something to himself, but it's kind of controlled, and then he gathers himself, and then at that point, he's in his head while he's on his way to his next shot. It's
Yeah.
there's a different
Yeah.
level to it.
Yeah, I think everybody just has to realize what their outbursts mean and then handle themselves accordingly.
Right.
A lot of people think that, oh, well, so and so might be perfect and they never outburst. No, that's not necessarily true. They just maybe handle it differently, or it's just so rare that it feels out of character when they do it. We've all
Right.
seen the jokes and such about James Conrad and his outrage, and how it's really just not that.
Really is the greatest kind of like soft trolling that
Yeah,
there is.
exactly.
And James Conrad, arguably the most gentle of characters to really interact with,
Uh,
just in what I've seen, and I can only assume he's not much different in person.
Yeah, he's as sweet and kind and soft spoken as anyone out there for sure, and then some. So yeah, very very gentle giant.
Yeah, and love that. James Proctor is someone who's recently full time on tour, and look at him show up and show out. I mean, tied. I think he was tied for fourth.
For
Um,
solo, for
Yeah,
solo
solo
actually. Yeah.
fourth here, James Proctor. I mean, fantastic performance again. Ezra doing well, another top 10 finish. The Goose is back. Kyle Klein with a top 10, and Brody Smith coming in with a top 10 finish. So his first to the season. Chris Clemens kind of falling off there off of the main card and just really couldn't kind of get it together. I don't know if it was strange winds. He seemed to not really have a lot of confidence in the putt. Kind of curious to see how he bounces back from that. Anthony Barella for me is the guy who I always have felt like is so close to being this fantastic elite. I mean, he's a gunslinger, like a Gannon Burr, even like an Adam Hammis, which is perfect because I know that they're buddies, off-season training partners and stuff like that. So of course the Discraft move made very little, surprise on my end here, but man, I feel like he's the closest to just being the most lethal um, guy on tour that is just he lacks just the last little bit of consistency in putting it all together.
Yeah, and first of all, Adam Hammis, I think, just celebrated a birthday today or yesterday, so happy
He
birthday to
did, yeah.
Adam. But
Happy birthday, Adam.
yeah, and I think it's all comes down to getting that monkey off of AB's back, right? We
Yeah.
all talk about it. We all say everything you just said about the how skilled he is, how talented he is, and how he just really needs to put it all together for every single round, because you
Right.
can't really have a slow round out there anymore and still pull off a win. That gets you somewhere in the top 5 maybe, depending on how good you are. And so you have to wonder, or maybe even worry, that once AB does break through, once he does get a win, is that going to be the mental hurdle that he gets over to then go on a tear? I think that's the almost immediate follow-up question, is when he gets that win, then is everybody else truly in trouble? Because he clearly, throws a mile, forehand, backhand, and it's all about just ultimately closing out with the putter, right?
Yeah.
That seems to be the
His
one.
Achilles heel.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see if he can do it. But when he does, like I said, I'm already
Look
worried
out.
about like step B. Yeah, in that progress for him.
Yeah, I mean, because arguably, if he tunes in the putter, and we've seen kind of glimpses, where he's online with the putter inside the circle, he's making some circle two putts, and it doesn't even need to be 50%, but he's knocking, 40% of his circle two putts. You start seeing that increase, then the man is dangerous, and you put him up against just about anybody. That distance is such a big advantage, especially controlled. When you can throw controlled 450, 500, 550, that is, I mean, you're in a different stratosphere than the average player, of course, but even on the pro tour with how tight and physically, or I'm sorry, distance demanding these courses are becoming, it is important that you have to be calibrated up to 550.
Yeah, and the fact that he does it so effortlessly. I mean, you watch him
Right.
throw 500 feet, and you're like,
Yeah.
I feel like he's putting the energy into it that I do to throw 200, and it's like, geez, it's just it's just really no big deal for him.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
The guy that does it for me is Drew Gibson. How effortless
Sure.
his run up is. And it's basically just like a X step, and
Hmm.
it's an X step
Pops into
shy
his
of
car.
a standstill, and then pop a buzz 450, 500. It's just
Yeah,
disrespectful at times, really.
yeah. It doesn't
Um,
seem fair, does it?
yeah, it does not do well for my self esteem. That is for sure. So another Pro Tour stop, Silver Series, another FPO champion, Sai Ananda, taking down the W here. Kristen's return, first tournament back after a non-podium finish. That is her. I mean, 18 for 19 podium finishes, and now that's 19 for 20. Coming back in second place, and Sai Ananda, I mean, not to take anything from her, she played lights out golf. Especially in that round 2 hot round, did great, stayed consistent, made her shots, and overall impressive win from the field. Again, own hitting the ace. And do you feel like, and I feel like this should be kind of a no-brainer question, Terry, but do you feel like Kristen is going to have any kind of, is there going to be anything less than what we saw last year? Do you see that down tick, or do you see that she is the person to beat at every single event?
Yeah, I can't imagine that anyone's thinking, oh, this is gonna last long, or
Yeah,
oh, Kristen's not gonna be winning again
it's
soon.
not going anywhere.
Yeah, you're crazy if you're thinking that. I feel like she just needs to get a few things dialed in. We continue to talk about, her just coming back from her surgery, her coming back. I mean, she has played not that great and has what a fourth and a second now. I mean,
Yeah.
that's still a compliment to her that she can be not that on and she's still in contention or is at least near her podium spots. It's yeah, it won't last long. So here's what I would say to the rest of the division: get your wins while you can,
Yep.
and consider this maybe a little bit of a blessing at the moment, because you have to assume, just with the numbers and the way that Kristen is, with the way she is in life and the way she is as a competitor, she's
Mhm.
not going to just all of a sudden take third every single event for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
She's going to be on top of that podium before long.
Right. It's never even an if she wins, it's when.
Correct.
And
Correct.
yeah, and you're right. Her off-season regimen is exactly that. It's intense, it's dedicated. I mean, the initiative's there. And yeah, I've said it all season on the past few episodes leading up to Waco. I said there's a sleeping giant is sitting in Estonia right now, and when she flies in, it's going to be hell for the FPO, and it was.
Yeah, yeah, and I was just reviewing her Instagram post that she made just yesterday.
Mhm.
Talking about how she was trying to figure some things out. She didn't have a quick fix for it, and she's excited to go home basically and hit reset again. She just had surgery a few months ago, and we immediately just assume she's going to come back. And I think when we saw her at Waco, we're like, oh, she never skipped a beat. So we just thought, well, her dominance is going to continue, and it's like, well, okay, she obviously played very well to take it down and showed that tenacity that she did. But we expecting her to win again every single weekend might still be a little unrealistic, even if
Yeah.
she helped set that expectation.
Yeah, I think it's important that everybody, yeah, maybe not have the expectation that she's going to win another one, but yeah, I think it's definitely clear that that Waco proved that she still got that dog in her, and that was a tough championship weekend. I mean, that was an absolutely murderous win conditions. I mean, it beat everybody's disc up. That final OB from Ella on the FPO side was just an absolute soul crusher to watch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And and that's tough. But yeah, again, to battle it out in the win, like you said, freshly recovered from a surgery, it's important she gets the time off. But yeah, Kristen is a sleeping giant, and when she's back at full capacity, it will be raining terror on the FPO. It already has in Waco, and now with a podium finish here in Houston for Texas State. So, anyways, next thing I want to jump into real quick is jumping into the outcome or the results that you saw there in Tallahassee and what your takeaways are from as we get ready to review the 2023 Disc Golf Pro Tour standings.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the reason why I love my post-production life, in addition to being live, is going and having the experiences like I did this weekend. And I say that because Marshall and Dave Montine and the whole crew and Visit Tallahassee, they're presenting sponsor, like Tallahassee as a city wants big disc golf events. And to have an entire city and parks department and visitors bureau and those types behind you can elevate and push things forward so much to just another level and on a whole nother scale. And it's clearly no diss on them, but when 400 golfers come to Las Vegas, Las Vegas doesn't notice it or even hardly care. Of course, maybe the Wild Horse does, but the city doesn't, because obviously,
they're not
Las
directly
Vegas,
affected by it.
Correct. Even probably in a place like Houston or some of our really big cities, we have these events, and it may or may not feel a direct impact of a pro tour, silver or regular elite event being there. But when you go to Leicester, Massachusetts, when you go out to Smuggler's Notch, when you go to some of these other places, or Idlewild, like there is Jonesboro. Yeah, perfect example. There's a direct and immediate impact, and there's a feeling of it. I mean, obviously, look what Emporia has done, right? They are the greatest example of this of all time, possibly in disc golf. So Tallahassee, to have the city behind them, to have the full support just on every level, from the parks department on down, and then the club and the individuals that are out there, it's just incredible. So I'm glad I was there. I was there in 2019, prior to them finding a spot on a silver series a couple years ago. And I'm just calling that I think we're going to see them maybe get that promotion or graduation again, because they're fighting hard for it. They're getting a ton of added cash. They've got a great course that people love playing, that's essentially historic, and they're doing everything right. So that's my plug. I Visit Tallahassee doesn't pay me directly, but I will tell you, they are doing things right over there, and I love to experience it. I love to go there and take those types of things in, and I'm so much more immersed, especially when I'm doing the only coverage of the weekend for it. Getting immersed in that culture and that club and those people, it's absolutely incredible. So that's my pitch, and yeah, I think you're going to see them. I'm assuming you're going to see them, if they're not back on an elite series or something of that nature, they're going to just continue to run just an absolute kick-ass event that a lot of people will want to get to, for sure.
I was talking about the Open at Austin and just kind of the impact there, even with the smaller city like Austin. Sure. At the time, there's two major events happening, the rodeo in Austin and South by Southwest, which nets over 1 million people into that city. The city doubles in size for those 2 weeks. And so, the Open at Austin didn't have much of an impact at all in comparison.
Correct.
However, Waco, or even had the Open in Austin been held a month from now, it probably would have a semi-significant impact, especially as an elite series.
Yeah, totally. And that's where I guess I say something about like a Las Vegas. Like there's a conference that has, 100 or 500 or 10,000 people at it every other week. Yeah. You're never going to be a big rock in the pond at Vegas, but
half a wing at a hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Some of these other cities, you can have such a huge impact. So yeah, for sure.
Definitely. And so, city of Tallahassee, anybody, if you're impressed by that plug, if you need to go ahead and shout the man out and send a check, you can catch him right here at the bottom of the screen. There's a ticker, Terry Miller at the Disc Golf Guy. Be sure to reach out. Checks payable to reach out to him for details.
Yeah. So, but it was, thank you. It was incredible though. Some great golf. Spoiler, if you haven't seen it already, your winners were Maddie Oram on the MPO side. I was getting ahead of myself. On the FPO side, Morgan Linz took down or held off, should I say, her sister, her twin sister, of course, in Jordan Linz. So Morgan was the champion on the FPO side. So yeah, the two of them, of course, are like this entire Florida story on their own, and their sponsorships and they're coming up and everything else. But yeah, the two of them, and then they held off Ellen Widboom, who was their next closest competitor. So all around, and if you missed it, one of the funnier moments, no surprise, out of Matty O this weekend was immediately after getting his trophy, he said, "I got to thank Westside and I got to thank Paul McBeth for not showing up." because Paul was in fact planning on playing in it. And then right after he played in Austin, he made a public post saying, "Hey, my finger is just tore up and I'm going to take the weekend off." Yeah, it was disgusting. Yeah. So that left Orem kind of as the man to beat. I think he had everybody by at least 20 ratings points. Wow. He went out and got the job done and did as the numbers would have suggested. Yeah, exactly. He did as the numbers would have predicted.
Well, good on Matty O for taking down the W. Shout out Paul McBee for throwing Matty O the bone. Yeah, throwing him a bone. And so all right, next thing up is going to be the most important part of our episode. So as a veteran podcast, every episode of our show is dedicated to a fallen service member in our segment that we like to call our Salute to Service. This episode of Backyard Chains is going to be dedicated to Marine Gunnery Sergeant Joseph Manusa, who passed away March 27th, 2003, serving during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was 33 years old, of San Jose, California, assigned to 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, 1st Marine Division out of Camp Pendleton, California. And he was killed March 27th in an ambush in Iraq. Marine Gunnery Sergeant Joseph Manusa. We have the watch. All right, and now for the most difficult transition of our show. We move into the final part of our show, and that's where we go over the standings. So, to no one's surprise on the MPO, because you've seen him on every podium so far this season, it's Calvin Heimberg at 294 points with a plus 50 this week, coming off of his win in Houston, and a dominant performance all 3 rounds. The man carded bogeys back to back and still managed to take down the W. It's just, this man's on another level this year, and everybody was talking about it who got their practice rounds in. We saw the chatter coming in. Senior, good to see you, buddy. And so everybody was talking about it in the practice rounds that this was the ultimate Vinny course. These are low level tee shots. I mean, these are low pushing 450, 500 foot shots. These are, we got to see the trusty Eagle out on the range. We got to see, he's got that new, he's got that new Millennium disc distance driver. Is it the Quasar?
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the Quasar. That's his new. We got to see that big boy coming out, and then he was also still working in the this is the one that Garrett throws. Why can't I remember it? New disc. Why can't I remember it? It's just the beefiest distance driver there ever was.
Yeah. I
It's
know
the
exactly what you're talking about.
I don't know why I can't remember it now. It's also a character. Yeah.
That's how much I follow.
Yeah, it's killing me. I'm so embarrassed now. But anyways, so it's gonna pop up and I'm just gonna shout it out randomly. But anyways, so we got to see a lot of different disc selections from him, and seeing the fairway performance, of course, is just second to none. But what I was most impressed with, outside of his abnormal putting, which is par for the course for him, is his forehand distance was so dialed in. I mean, 350. Almost 400 on a couple shots. I mean, it was elite. We've seen a huge uptick in his forehand distance and just the confidence he's had in that shot. And I feel like for me, that was probably the last little piece of the puzzle that I feel like he needed, as far as, when he gets when he gets the yips on the putter. Other than that, the man can slay just about any course. He's got the distance, he's got the precision, and he can go low level, which is, I mean, it's pretty fantastic. And so, anyways, enough fangirling about Vinny. I can pass it forward to you. I mean, what are your thoughts on looking at this top 10 list here, starting with Luke Sampson on up? How are you feeling about the top 10 standings so far?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any. I don't know if surprises is the word, but I mean, you're seeing Ezra also off to a really great start this year. With him, what is he sitting in third at the moment?
Yeah.
Hold. Yeah, I mean, I think that's awesome to see. He's been very consistent. Waco was the one time it looked like he struggled a little bit, but other than that, he's had a pretty good year. And then you mentioned it earlier in the show, James Proctor. And I've known James for, I don't know, 10 years or so, and he's always been good, but that full commitment to the tour is now making sure everybody knows who he is,
Yeah,
right? And
that
he's
is the
got,
difference maker this year, it seems like.
yeah, for sure. And he's has his background is in special education and teaching, and he's just got a super kind, soft heart and soul, and is just an all around really nice guy to talk to. And then he's got this really just unique and very distinct form, right? When both with his driving and his putting, the way he kind of curls his wrist and the way he kind of runs up, it's all really unique. But clearly, it continues to work for him. I don't know if there's any other major surprises here. Of course, it'll be interesting to see as the year goes on, when will we see more Eagle McMahon, and what will that mean for the standings? And then obviously Wysocki. Was he did he again at the last second have to finalize and say he was pulling out, right?
Yes.
So I mean, if he's going to continue to be week to week, that's crazy to think. We're now, you thought, okay, the first event maybe, but here we are 3-4 events in between silver and regular. And now just take that a step ahead and say, will Wysocki care about a few more silver events that otherwise wouldn't have been on his schedule? Because he might want to have a little catch up, or he's, trying to make up for some long time. So think about that as a fan and as a host of one of these events. Normally, someone like a Dickerson or a Wysocki may go to a few of these early events, pick up some points,
Right.
and then probably kind of brush the rest of them off because they're not too worried about it. Well, that may be the opposite for Wysocki. I mean, hell, that guy's gonna be showing up at my C tier here in a couple of weeks. I don't know. He's gonna need all the practice he can get.
I think he's gonna need the points.
Yeah.
And then I mean, you're right. This has had such an impact to his early start. And I talked about sleeping giants with the FPO and Kristen Tatar, but there's two in the MPO by the name of Eagle McMahon and the other one named Ricky Wysocki. Those are two guys that whenever they're prepared to be back on tour full time, they're at least operating at 80% consistently. It's gonna be trouble.
Yeah,
and it's gonna shake up that top 10 is gonna get completely dismantled.
Yeah, there's essentially two more spots, right, that are going to be pushing everyone else down in the standings when they show up and they're both healthy and playing like we know how they can play. So that's just something else I guess you could keep in the back of your mind, that somebody who's not even really in the standings, and then like those fancy charts that you see when a whole bunch of stuff is going. I don't know what the term is for those, but they all keep moving,
Right.
like whatever. I feel like you're going to see that with Wysocki's standings for the year. Just see him like shoot up week after week after week, when all of a sudden he's going to be sitting in fourth at the end of the Disc Golf Pro Tour standings this year. So it'll be big. Maybe he lays low. I mean, what does that mean? Will he get an event in before the first major? Will he play Music City, and be ready for the major? Or does he go to the major? Does he miss the major? I mean, there's so many questions, clearly, but when he's back, you got to assume he's going to be in contention. And he might be hungrier than anyone. He won't be worn out. He might be a little frustrated and have a little bit of rust, but he's going to be hungry, and he's going to still have fresh legs.
Yeah, see, I feel like that's going to be incentivizing to just like murder the field, man.
Yeah.
He's going to be on a war path, and I think both of them will, to be honest. So I'm just trying to scan through the top 50 or so to see who we're seeing that may be anybody of a surprise that they may be down. And of course, like we've got a few people that are out. They've played very minimal. I was just looking at Simon, for example. Simon's only got 2 events this year. So that's something to consider. Whereas Brody's played all but LMO. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think other than that, though, you're right. I mean, I feel like the card, with the exception of Eagle and Ricky, is kind of up to snuff of what we would be expecting going into this season. The same old familiar faces here at the top, probably, I don't know, 20. Zach having those 2, he didn't participate in Vegas, and so he's already missed 1 Elite Series, but he's for sure that he's going to be present, of course, in his home state. So other than that, though, I mean, the points don't really have any necessary significance as far as confidence of where this is going to be in 6 weeks from now.
No. The only other, I mean, I guess you could argue about tons of different people, but as I'm scrolling down just a little bit, and I did look and see where he finished last year to compare, Gossage moved up 7 spots to get into 30th. As just a name I'm looking at that's kind of jumping out at me, because of course we saw what he's capable of. And so to see him in 30th right now, he finished 16th last year on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. So I feel like he's probably a little off of what he would consider his pace. And like you just said, Simon Lizotte or some of these other guys who haven't been at all the events, you understand that. But Gossage, who's been playing pretty consistently, I'm sure, if you said to him, hey, how do you feel about your 30th place standing at the moment, he'd probably say, well, there's plenty of time, I got room to make up. But he probably doesn't love that he's off to a somewhat of a slower start.
Yeah, definitely. And this is going to be, I mean, this is another guy who, I mean, just following last year, that performance, trying to chase down the GOAT, he's got something that he's got to be able to prove this year. And I'm sure, like you said, he's not where he wants to be, but I think he's still got quite a bit of tour left, and it's certainly early, but he needs to definitely pick up the pace. I think that Waker performance was a little rough, and honestly, the conditions were typical beast conditions, right? It was rough, and it was surprisingly okay one of the days, and so it just kind of threw everybody's game off.
Yeah, and I say all of that because now, I see that, he just had the 8th place finish here at Texas State's, which I wasn't privy to, but seeing that he finished there, and maybe that will be a catalyst or a little bit of a jump start to get him on track in terms of what he's fully capable of. So, just one other guy that just jumped out at me. That was all.
Yeah, definitely. I can tell you this too, something that I've noticed just in so far in the tour thus far is that the camera footage that I've seen of Garrett Gurthey's putting, although his style hasn't changed, I feel like his accuracy has ticked up a little bit. I feel like he's picked up the putting a little bit, and we see him slide up 3 spots up here to 16. Hasn't had the best finishes all year, but he took down a second place finish at NWC, and then other than that, that's kind of been his highlight this year. But I want to see that guy. I want to see that guy do well. I'm curious as to how he does with his middle game, his putting, and the consistency that he can produce, especially up against today's card, like today's top 10 that we see, in Calvin, Kyle. Ezra's a familiar face. Paul's a familiar face. But even James Proctor, now that he's on full-time, Gannon Burr. And then we haven't talked about some of the other, but Cole Redolin and Anthony Barella, a lot of these younger talents, all these – listen, these older guys are in trouble, is my point. So, and we're getting to see it. It's just an exciting time to be around to watch, a kid who can't buy alcohol, but can take down a major and then this year take down an Elite Series. It's interesting to watch this stuff, man. What a time to be in disc golf.
Yeah, it's more competitive than it's ever been, and we don't see that slowing down at any point. And I can attest to that again, even at a different level, being in Tallahassee and seeing Matty O on the card at the age of 35, and then he's with a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, and a 20-year-old who are all just a few strokes off the pace. And like that, and that might be commonplace every weekend in Finland. but I feel like it's becoming more and more commonplace here in the US as well. So, you know, you nailed it. There is a lot of great young talent, and the old guard or the touring veterans and pros are just going to have to continue to work that much harder, because it's only going to get tougher. It's not going to get any easier to win. That's for sure.
Definitely, and I appreciate the eloquent rephrasing of my statement. As I said, old guy
Oh, good.
step to the side. So I guess, with all of that being said, something personal experience of my own. I was playing a disc golf course this last weekend called Wilco, and I'm playing with. I think I might be the youngest guy in that group. I'm 32. I think the oldest guy in my group's probably in his 50s, and we're playing, and I'm shooting down a fairway to par five. I've hit a slight dog leg left. It goes right. So I've got to get first gap is probably 325 feet down. And I'm just going to throw the hardest, flattest shot I can throw to get there. And I'm just going to hit the corner and then hope I got a forehand into the green or into a position for an approach. And these kids decided to play through. Oldest one was probably 16, 17, and they just bombed a 450-foot hyzer into position for the eagle approach. I was so it was wind out, blown out of my sails was like it's such an understatement. I've never felt like such a peon in my life than to get absolutely smoked by these kids who they were confident. They said, "Oh, I'm gonna go up here," and I was like, don't talk about it unless you got it. And
Yeah.
they had it. They had it. So shout out to those kids. They absolutely embarrassed 8 grown ass men out on the course. It was fantastic to watch, though. We of course congratulate them because those were bombs. Absolute nukes.
Yeah, and that's gonna continue to be more commonplace through and through, without a doubt. It's all part of the evolution of our game, and now with so many new people and so many new athletes and money and everything else that's now here in disc golf, it's going to be unlike we've ever seen before. There's no doubt about it.
Definitely. Just take a moment to reflect where you've been from your beginning time trying to capture disc golf and put it out there for other people aside from yourself to see, and think about where it's at now. Just the jump in the last 4 or 5 years, but COVID obviously having that impact on the world and sports alike. And so it's interesting. The amount of people that have come into the sport, that have dedicated their lives into the sport, and then like you said, the money, the advertising, the attention, the marketing, the investment. It's awesome. When we can watch a popular sport like cornhole on ESPN, it makes no sense to me that we can't watch disc golf.
Yeah, and it keeps coming down to, disc golf is incredibly difficult to film and and make it look good, and largely because we're traversing through all of this crazy terrain, often places that people wouldn't have any other business being at. Like, you think
Right.
about being out in the back of Maple Hill at a tree farm.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
that's not where the general public goes, except to go cut down a freaking tree, a couple weeks out of the year.
Right.
So, we have these challenges. Of course, the technology is getting better. The signals are getting better. The cameras, all that other stuff is getting better. And it still continues to be one of the more difficult things for us to do, is to cover it in a live capacity. But you're absolutely right that there's no reason why disc golf isn't compelling or couldn't be on some of those other channels. I think the question that begs to be asked always is like, does that mean we've arrived? Does that matter anymore? Is ESPN, as much as it's like the pinnacle of sports or sports broadcasting, is it the end all be all still? Does it matter as much today as it did 15 years ago? And I like you said, I think the answer is no. You can, whether it's like a shot like Philo's or a Final Nine or whatever that gets 1 million views on YouTube. Like,
Right.
I think we're proving that the other channels and methods of distribution can be wildly impactful. When we get stats and data from some of the content network providers, CDNs, like a Vimeo type, or somebody reaches out, or early days, talking to some of these platforms, and they'd be like, we saw a spike in traffic for your thing, whatever that, whatever event that was. We saw a spike in traffic that we don't see with all these other people that are doing live, niche sports or niche broadcasts. And I think that's really awesome. And we just gotta have to keep doubling down on that and take it from there. But I don't know that the end all be all is any longer is Sports Center and is ESPN.
Right.
As much as it feels like that gives us more validity, just fast forward 10 or 15 years and what 20-year-old is going to give a crap about Sports Center? Like, not that it's going away, but
No,
it's not going to have the impact it does even today, I think.
it will become niche.
Yeah.
It won't be the standard. Like right now we're kind of the niche podcast as we're sitting down right now on a Tuesday evening talking about disc golf, but like this could likely be something that's and already is something that's much larger. It's getting millions of views every week on YouTube across all of, whether it be my channel, your channel, Disc Golf Network, anybody else, it's getting attention at very, very high numbers. And so the marketing at this point is what's going to do it. And not that the sports are necessarily in comparison, but the sports talk in comparison. Pat McAfee is like a prime example of like proper crowdfunding. If you're popular and you get the attention of your followers, just like disc golf has, it will fund itself. And so, his separation from Barstool was probably a prime example of that. Disc golf and from a macro level is crowdfunded. The reason why this has become the industry that it had, because that's what it is now, it's a full industry, has been 100% crowdfunded as far as the media coverage, as far as everything else. There's no ESPN or Fox News affiliate that's coming in and funding money of the camera footage. This is all Patreon subscribers. It's, donations of other companies and sponsors and tour directors working together to pull together money and resources to make things happen. And people like yourself going out there and investing your own time and money and then providing the coverage that we otherwise wouldn't get to see. I only pass Tallahassee when I go visit my in-laws. Other than that, I don't stop there. I don't ever plan, but I fully intend on watching Matty O go slay some 20-year-olds here tonight after the show's over, before I go catch you live tonight with Johnny V. So anyways, with all of that being said all that to say this, Terry, thank you. This is, it was coverage like yours, like Jomez, Gatekeeper, GK Pro, all of those guys, Central Coast. I can't even name them all because there's too many, but all of those guys are the ones that initially taught me what I needed to know about disc golf, as far as the tour, the coverage, the conversations, the background, and it's people like you that I highly admire, and I want to thank you for being a part of this community and being an advocate and a perfect ambassador for this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, that's very kind. I do appreciate all the very kind words there. It's been a labor of love, of course. I've had a passion for disc golf my entire life, since finding it when I was like 12 or 13 years old. That's awesome. And I was just, everybody says, "Oh, I wish I would have found it earlier." And I'm one of those fortunate people that did. And yeah, my passion was initially playing, and it still is. I enjoy playing, but the fact that I knew there was other things that I could do with it, and even that started off as just a side project of just trying some stuff out and picking up my first $99 camera, and everything that we did was just all part of that journey and that learning. And it was the fact that now, like you said, it is an industry, the fact that we have dozens of disc golf podcasts and hundreds of manufacturers making all these different molds, and everything that it's turned into is not something I would have ever necessarily predicted. But I am pretty damn lucky that I've been here for, so much of the ride. I came in the mid 90s, clearly the pioneers and the forefathers before us, and the steady ads and the hundreds of thousands of other people that did what they did to provide a framework for disc golf, just allowed me to step in and take part of the baton and keep moving it in whatever direction I could. And clearly it's only going to keep moving forward with more people ready to grab, part of the baton and keep running with it. So I'm just happy to be, a little part of that. It's been incredible.
For sure. Absolutely. And most of the time a free ticket to the ride. You make a comparison to ball golf, and my favorite comparisons are that, one, I can play 18 way faster. My bag costs significantly less than a golf bag. and I can actually get off of a tee box, so I'm good with it. You know, I can actually tee off, and it goes somewhat in the direction where I'm trying to go. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. It goes
so
somewhere.
I have a lot more confidence. I will leave golf to my 12-year-old, who is an absolute unit on a golf course. But get me on a disc golf course, and that's where that's the only place that I feel like I could ever compete at a even casual level.
Well, hopefully, hopefully he makes enough money to then support your disc golf habit, if he becomes a professional golfer.
I hope that she will.
Oh, she, okay. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I absolutely hope that she will.
That's awesome.
She loves it. She takes it seriously, and she tries to get into disc golf every now and then, which I always try to encourage. But man, it's to say it's an addiction for me is an understatement. Like I said, I've got a whole drawer behind me, a collection of discs. I've got my little signatures there. I finally got a chance to meet a pro. I met Paul Ulibarri playing one of the veterans for vets tournaments here in Austin a couple months ago, which was awesome. And got to meet Paul, great guy. A little shorter than I thought he'd be, but other than that,
you said a pro. Oh, okay, yeah, Yuli's a pro. Okay, yeah, I'm just kidding,
man. Don't be dogging the cap like that, man.
I love it. I've known Yuli since way back in the day. Actually, one of the 2000
since the man bun days.
Yeah, way before that. I mean,
awesome.
I'm talking 2010.
Yikes.
There's probably a vlog of 2000. Well, I started vlogging in 2010, and he was in contention at the World Championships that week in Crown Point, Indiana. So yeah, go there. There's probably some funny videos way back in the early vlog days of not knowing how to work a camera or what we were doing. I didn't know what B-roll even was, but yeah, go. Some of my favorite interviews are some of those early ones from more than a decade ago. So. Awesome. Me and Yuli are we're all good. I just had to get a jab in there.
Oh, you said pro? Oh, don't at me, Paul. I want no smoke.
Wasn't there some big announcement? He was teasing something out. Oh, I think it's going to get released in a day or two. That's what it was. I saw something on Instagram, some cryptic, little fancy him walking around a course, and I'm guessing it's. I'm just going to project and guess that it has something to do with his academy or something, that he's doing something big. Yeah, that he's doing something big, and we love it. I mean, that's truly a testament, in all seriousness, to where our sport is. The fact that we have a Saki Bomb Foundation, we have a Paul Macbeth Foundation, we've got a Yuli Academy, we've got these things, these legacies, and these things. Double G and his jerky, and his Double G Jerky Foundation. The fact that those even exist is incredible. I mean, for decades, our players were trying to make enough money to live, to just live and get to the next tournament. Now they're making enough money not only to have a semi-comfortable or very comfortable living, but then also to have enough money that they feel like they can give some away or raise it for other causes. Like, that alone should tell you how much we've grown just in the last few years. And I'm here for it because it's awesome.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about the disc golf community, only having a few years into it now, is that it's hands down the most embracing community I've ever participated in. I've played a lot of different sports, in my life, and I feel like, compared to any other sport, a solo sport specifically, this is the one that is the most encouraging. It doesn't matter if it's bad or good shot. It's, hey, almost got it, or, hey, good putt, good run. Sure. Even if you shank it wide right, good run. You weren't short, you sailed it 40 long or whatever. And I think just how open and embracing one another typically are on cards is what I like about There's not a lot of, you don't see a lot of beef here.
There's not a lot of cutthroat mentality. I mean, clubs and organizations and a few people will eventually drum up their drama, and that's usually because egos are getting in the way. But yeah, as you said, though, it is a very welcoming community. And I said this 10 years ago, at least, if not longer. I said one thing that I've always loved about disc golf is I feel like if I were flying over the United States and like I parachuted out and landed on some random course, by the end of that round, somebody at that course would offer to put me up for the night and be able to crash at their place because I'm a fellow disc golfer. Like that speaks so much about what we are as a community. And I'm not familiar with I don't know, RC, or car racing, but I don't know
Mhm.
if they're built the same way. I don't know if, wakeboarding or literally any other sport, as you're saying, like if it's quite as engaging and as community focused
Yeah.
as we are. I mean, I always use the, hashtag Frisbee family, like
Mhm.
ultimate disc golf, freestyle, MTA, all of these different disciplines and all of these different ways to throw a Frisbee. Like it's a special brotherhood and sisterhood that we really have among each other.
Definitely. I'll admit that I've been desperate enough to watch bowling on TV once,
Okay.
and not once did I see competitors aside from the very end of the game when it was a kind of a good game bump. Did I see them say "nice shot"?
Sure,
You know,
sure.
whereas like you'll hear James in the background after a circle two putt drained in from long, be like, "Nice putt, dude."
Yeah.
And it's like you're competing against that guy for money, for tour point standing. There's implications to you losing to this guy, but it doesn't matter. That was a great
Yeah.
putt.
Yeah.
45-foot headwind putt, and he's sailing, and just dead center heart of the chains. Gotta love it. I mean,
Yeah.
you can just appreciate the greatness, I guess.
I totally agree. And I love seeing that among even our best players. It may or
Mhm.
may not be easier at some of the lower levels, the amateur levels and such, when everyone is newer, is just cutting their teeth. But to see it even at the top levels, the respect that's given from player to player, it's incredible. I love it.
I had a buddy of mine participate in his first tournament a while back, and he said that one guy on his card scored a plus 100 something. And I can't imagine the face. the
That's a lot
oh
of
man,
golf. That's a lot of golf.
that's a lot of golf. I asked him. He said it was over 5 hours. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, somebody's got to step in at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you want to encourage everyone, and I don't want to tell somebody they can or shouldn't play, but and you got everybody starts somewhere. But yeah, I mean, are you holding up 90, 89 other
Right,
players is the
right.
question. Are you holding up 71 other players on the course? It becomes the question. And it's not, everybody can struggle and have a bad day, but if you don't have a very, very, I don't know, I don't want to say that either, because like I don't want to ever discourage someone from coming out and seeing what tournament plays about. I mean, that's what MA4 is for. That's what FA4 is for. I mean, you got to start somewhere, but yeah, yeah.
Is there a such thing, and just forgive the ignorance, is there a such thing as like cards playing through other cards if you've got a guy
No,
that's, I wouldn't
no,
think so.
no. It's it's
Just
it's
because of
pretty
the order of
explicit in the
things.
rules. Yeah, it's explicit in the rules, unless there's essentially I'll paraphrase, unless there's a ruling that needs to be had on the course and like a TD or an official
Mhm.
is getting called over for a specific reason, um, then, and even that is really rare, then yeah, you're not playing through another card. Trust me, I've played in 300 and some tournaments uh, back when I used to play more. And there's times you want to play, and I'm a really fast player, so I really
Right.
have no patience for slow people. Let me rephrase that. I have no patience for people that exceed 30 seconds. If you want to take
Yes.
29.99 seconds,
Mhm.
I'm here for it. Like that's fine.
Are you a caller? Like, will you call it out?
Um, I'm not really in a position where that's an issue for me anymore,
Mhm.
because I play a couple of really low level basic events a year anymore. But
But when you
if
did.
somebody, yeah, if somebody were taking forever and excessively going over the 30 seconds,
Yeah.
thankfully I never really dealt with it much, almost never. But if somebody were today, yeah, I would have no problem calling it. If it was an obvious, yeah, I'd have no problem with it.
So Backyard Sports Media's mantra is that we are uncensored, unapologetic, and politically incorrect. So is this a Gannon or Nico situation? If they're on your card, are you calling them out?
100%.
Yeah.
Like I would now,
And there's nothing wrong with that.
no, no, no. Like, and I get frustrated that our other players don't do it. And I've heard
Yeah.
every single reason and excuse and story about it forever. I've been around the sport for 30 years. I understand why people don't. And I know it's uncomfortable and it's
Mhm.
awkward. And I get all that. But at the
Nobody
end
wants
of
to
the
be
day,
confrontational.
of course, and nobody wants to think they're getting in somebody else's head or they're working them or
Yeah.
they're trying to play favorites. I get all of that, but at the end of the day, when your play is holding up then everyone else too,
Right.
like that's just unfair. Why should 71 people play by the rules and this one person take 38 seconds on every throw? Like, I don't know how that anyone feels like that makes sense or that's justifiable. And I've been a big proponent of just that, of like watching the time, and I've heard every argument or even potential solution, but right now it's the rule, so I just want it enforced. That's it. And so many people have every other excuse not to. So anyway, I'd call it. I'd have no problem calling it, especially at this age, playing with whomever. Like I don't need to feel threatened by anybody, but I'd have no problem calling it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean,
hurry the F up. That's what I say.
And that's right, dude. That's right. Nico, talking to you, bud. No, but anyways, honestly, you have to call it. I think one of my favorite, and it's again, nothing against Gannon or Nico. I feel like there was a video I saw, maybe it wasn't a time violation. I think it was a courtesy violation where Nate Perkins had said something to Nico because of his kind of antics, kind of the not. Maybe.
That was one of my videos. That was
okay, good. It was Disc Golf Guy coverage. Yeah,
that would have been 2016 or 2017 Hall of Fame Classic, maybe 2018. It was hole 9 at Jackson and or 12, one of the two. And well, Nico had an outburst.
Mm-hmm.
He said something like, "Oh, I fucking suck," I think is what he blurted out. And Perkins said, "Come on, Nico." He's like, "What? I can say I suck." And it's like, well, it wasn't the fact that you said it. It's the fact that you blurted it out loudly and still distracted. And the fact that you distracted everyone else around you, even if it was self-directed, you were still distracting to anyone else and everyone else around you. And you're blurting out an obscenity, but it wasn't the first time in the round either. Right. I mean, it was a few times. And at that point, Perkins had enough and just said, "Hey, I'm giving you a warning."
Well, and so, good on him for
I applaud the hell out of Perkins. Hell yeah.
And that was a tough position to be in. And Perkins is another guy who presents himself as this kind of like non-confrontational, sweet, free-spirited guy. But like, good for him for reaching that breaking point and wanting to hold a card mate accountable. That's important.
Here's what I've always said is it's not fair when one, and this is times 1,000. It's not fair when one person on the card gets to dictate or attempts to dictate the attitude and the mood and the tempo of the entire card. And I've played around some top level pros. I've called out some back when I played and I was a decent professional. I'd have no problem calling out someone because it's not fair that one guy's bad round and bad day got to ruin it for his 3 card mates.
Yeah.
And that's 100%. What I experienced more than once. When you have somebody that's taking off a vacation day, this is a little more old school, but you had somebody taking off a vacation day that works 9 to 5 and they're on vacation for the week to go play the World Championships and enjoy their week and play disc golf. Maybe they're competitive, maybe they're not, but then somebody else is on their card just making it miserable for you. Like, how is that fair?
Yeah.
And that's why I've never had a problem calling somebody out.
That's such a great perspective, is thinking about everything that just the individual card mate had gone through just to go through that. And then just to find out that you've got a pissed off Nico or a pissed off so-and-so on your card that's just going to just ruin it for everybody. I would not hesitate to call that out.
Yeah. I once had a Hall of Famer kick wood chips because they threw a bad shot and then kicked a bunch of wood chips onto the tee pad I was about to step onto. And I was just like, I remember saying something to the effect of like, "God, you're terrible to play with. I don't care who you are, what you've done. You are an absolute miserable person to play with." And he kind of, gingerly, kicked away the wood chips and kind of half-ass apologized. But I was like, from that day forward, I had so much less respect for that person because, again, they were making my time miserable by the way that they were conducting themselves. And you're not out to please me on a course. We don't have to be best friends. I'm not suggesting that either, but you should have it in check. And maybe if it's one round and it's one outburst, I think that gets taken into account. Right. But if it's like people, you go up to the board and you're like,
problem.
You look at it and you're like, "Oh, I'm playing with that person." Like, don't ever be that guy, right? Like
We
when
talked
other
about
people look at it, like, ugh.
Right. We talked about 3 names in this show that when I mentioned them, they didn't even remotely be like, "Oh, you think that guy's confronted?" Like you knew exactly who I was talking about. And so, it's not a surprise that the pattern becomes kind of associated with their persona and can definitely, like we talked about, it has ramifications. But again, it's not just the professional ramifications. It's about 2 things: tact and etiquette.
Yeah.
Time and place, and there's a reason. Being humble in defeat. We've seen the greatest in the world have some of the worst performances of their careers and still lose with grace. And
Yeah.
so,
And
to be the best of the best, you gotta lose like the best too.
exactly. I agree.
100%. Well, any closing thoughts, Terry, before we bring this bad boy to a close?
I don't have anything in particular. I could give all the plugs about
Please
please
do.
well, just enjoy. Hopefully you guys enjoy Disc Golf Network. I mean, the network continues, and to be totally transparent, I'm not an employee of Disc Golf Network. I'm a contracted person that of course
Yeah.
helped get things started way back in the day.
Mhm.
And
And
Disc Golf
secured the bag in the
Network
process.
continues
Good
to
for you.
push forward along the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Yeah, and so it's hopefully we're bridging that gap of why people have struggled with either liking or wanting to watch live, but I think it continues to get better every single week in a lot of different ways. I just made the comment the other day that I used to go to a tournament and everything that was needed to do the live broadcast was in a suitcase with me. And now we have $1 million truck, or trailers driving around with 10 or 12 cameramen. And it's obviously grown tremendously. So anyway, and people sometimes then take what I just said as like, oh, that's because live, he's a live homer versus post. No, I love post-production as well. I just made it. I'm making more this weekend. Post-production isn't going anywhere. Post-production has a ton of benefits and is also great, and it will never go away. But
Right.
I hope people just continue to enjoy whatever suits them for whatever reasons. And then, podcasts and all those other, fun things. And people are making incredible videos that are, either are straight shot by shot or are doing other fun things. And we've got so many talented humans out there that are finding what suits them best. And I love seeing it all. And I think it's only going to grow and elevate the game and the media in every possible way. So I love seeing it, and I hope people enjoy it. And yeah, that's about all that I got. I just thanks for having me, and we'll just keep putting out whatever content, live, post, vlogs, social media, whatever it is. I'm just going to keep grinding away and traveling around the world and enjoying what I'm doing.
Oh no.
Oh, and the light goes out almost on cue. That's pretty funny. It's just a little travel
Wow.
light and just like almost on cue, like, shut up, Terry. No, that's seriously though. That's about all that I got. I really do appreciate having me.
What
I'll
are you
get on and
talking
talk
about,
disc golf with
Terry?
anybody anytime.
To the dozens of viewers that may watch this episode, we appreciate you guys tuning in for the show. Terry, I cannot thank you enough for joining me. Thank you for the great conversation. Thank you for your contributions to the disc golf community and giving me something that occupies an insane amount of my free time. And so healthy outlets, and I appreciate the content, the personality, the poise on the field with the professionals, and then the information you provide, the insight, you're even everything, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, you're just like a fountain of information for what's happening behind the scenes, and we appreciate it.
I'm happy to do so. Disc golf is life, and I love our
Facts.
Frisbee family. So thanks again.
That's right. Terry, thank you for joining us. For all of you guys at home who's watching, thank you so much for tuning in to Backyard Chains, brought to you by Backyard Sports. My name is Raul Herrera. I got the disc golf guy, Terry Miller, with me. We will see you guys, or I will see you guys next week. That was a little presumptuous. Sorry, Terry. All right. See you guys next week. Thanks.